Okay, if everybody agrees, maybe we can start. It's 3 minutes past 3, and hopefully more participants will join us in the next minutes. Is everything with everybody? Are you okay?
Yes, indeed. I think it makes sense. A prompt start.
Okay, then I'll first thing thank our speakers of today, Christof Schoser and Michael Hahn. And I'm going to say a few words just to introduce the subject of today's discussion. It was at the end of April of this year at the ABA spring meeting at the Enforcers Roundtable, the presence of the heads of the US and Canadian authorities, that Commissioner Vestager went on record saying something like, Europe is open for business, but it shouldn't mean that we leave European countries open for takeovers by others who do not have to play by the same rules. And I remember there was a lot of interest or curiosity that this statement stirred. I remember some colleagues from Washington, they told us we set up a call in those days, were extremely curious to understand what had prompted the Commissioner Vestager's statement, and asking also, of course, if there was anything in the pipeline. So fast forward to June 17, this is the date where the Commission has issued the white paper setting out these proposals for a comprehensive set of new tools to tackle the potentially competition distorting effects of foreign subsidies on the level playing field in the European Union internal market. The Commission has responded to the calls of the European Council at a meeting of March of last year, and also calls from the member states. We can refer in this respect to the joint letter that the governments of Italy, France, Germany, and Poland sent to Commissioner Vestager in February of this year, and also to the non-paper by the Dutch government on this very subject that was drafted and circulated in December last year. I mean, it is a revolutionary project, really. These tools aim to addressing existing gaps in the EU competition, public procurement, trade defense, and also foreign direct investment rules as they are now. So it is really a revolution, and we are extremely thankful to our speakers of today. Christof is the head of the task force on third country subsidies of DG Competition. So one of the things I would like to know from him is how long the preparation of the white paper has taken, how long ago the task force was set up. And also, as a discussion, we have a private practitioner from a third country jurisdiction. I think maybe Ermelinda will like to introduce our speaker, Michael Hahn.
Yes, indeed. I would like to really say thank you to Michael Hahn. We have worked as colleagues for a few years in the past, and now he is working in an international law firm. He has really extensive experience in assisting non-EU investors willing to invest in Europe, inter alia, and we're all very grateful to get as a discussant Michael Hahn's views and you know, suggesting, because often the devil is really in the details, especially when you are envisaging such really groundbreaking tool, and you know, and I've spoken to a few clients who said, oh, you know, I read the press release, another suspensory notification. We, you know, how many more do we need to expect? And obviously, you know, I also expect other participants to this seminar will have had reactions from clients. So, as you say, Cesare, we're really grateful to you know, have Michael share with us a few practical ideas by way of initial reaction. Thanks very much, Michael, for being with us today.
Thank you, Melinda. So Christof will kick off, and Michael will give his comments on Christof's speech, and then there will be a session of questions and answers from the other attendees. Thank you very much, Christof.
Yes, thank you, Cesare, and thank you for inviting me to present the white paper. I will, indeed follow a presentation if I manage to put it online, but it worked some moments ago. So I will try to put it online. I hope you can see it now, but actually we are already too far ahead in the presentation. Sorry about this. Okay. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, here we go. So as Cesare was asking about the task force, sorry, here we go. Well, the task force was set up only earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, to basically fulfill a commitment that was taken by the new commission that came into force at the end of last year, which was this idea of developing ideas how to address foreign subsidies. And the idea goes back most notably to a communication in March of last year, the so-called EU-China communication, which defined different actions. And one of those actions was to see if there is a need to develop mechanisms and tools to assess subsidies that are given by non-EU governments and that have an impact on the EU internal market. And it was only beginning of this year that actually this task force, which I'm heading, was set up. And over the past few months, we've been busy drafting this white paper. And now, obviously, we will be busy to ensure the follow-up of this. I will take you in, I think we said 20 to maximum 30 minutes. I will take you through the main points of the white paper, which sets out our initial thoughts. As you will know, the white paper is a document of reflection rather than any specific proposal. So we are, I think, very much looking forward to the public consultation and the results that we getting from stakeholders. And I think you were right to say in the introduction, also Melinda, that this is quite a new, it is really a new instrument that is not, well, what we actually have in mind would complement the existing legal framework that exists today in the competition area and in the trade area. But let me point out the main elements of the presentation. So I will introduce a bit the white paper, its economic and legal context. Then I'll take you through the three modules, as we call them, the three tools, which are proposals, potential proposals to set up a legal instrument to address foreign subsidies. And there is also the question of access to EU funding. And finally, it's the white paper more than my presentation, which discusses in more detail the interplay of these proposals with existing EU and international legal instruments in this area. Okay. When we come to the purpose and the problem definition, well, I think a good point of departure is to think about the EU state aid rules that have existed for decades, which are meant to ensure a level playing field between companies in the EU internal market and control the subsidies granted by EU governments. there is a long-standing tradition, and it's a sophisticated system. But at the same time, there has been an increasing perception and realization that the foreign subsidies, so basically subsidies given by non-EU governments to companies, fall outside this control, but they may nonetheless have an impact on the EU internal market. I mean, traditionally, you would think that foreign subsidies or governments outside the EU give only subsidies to benefit the economic activity in their own country, but due to the stronger trade ties and let's say globalization in more general terms, there can be spillover effects, or even there can also be an explicit strategy behind helping companies to improve their economic activity outside the borders of the home country, and notably, of course, the case that is interesting for us, a kind of impacts that such subsidies would have on the EU. So in the white paper, we at least describe a number of situations where a foreign subsidy could have an influence on an EU activity, and where there's a risk of a distortion of competition, so similar to the risk of distortion of an EU state aid. We have looked in the white paper at the existing instruments. So in the competition area, that's obviously the merger control, state aid control, and antitrust control. To what extent foreign subsidies and their impacts are captured in those instruments. The brief answer of this analysis has been that none of those instruments actually really takes into account foreign subsidies. They have other purposes, and if at all accidentally, I would say foreign subsidies may enter the analysis, but they are certainly never any important part of the assessment. We've looked at the existing trade policy instrument. There, in that area, of course, you have part of the instruments that do look into foreign subsidies, namely those in the area of anti-dumping, where the subsidies are given to companies in the respective home country, but then what the trade instruments traditionally look at is at the imports of those goods into the EU. So there, the angle to look at is the subsidized product that is imported. But other subsidies, be it subsidies to for services, service provision, or for investment or for acquisitions, are typically not taken into account by those trade instruments. And the same is true for public procurement rules, where today EU authorities, when assessing bids in public procurement procedures, can look at so-called abnormally low bids. And in this context, they may look into the existence of foreign subsidies, but that is a rare case, which in practice is usually not applied. So the kind of tentative conclusion of that analysis is that there is a regulatory gap with respect to foreign subsidies, that certain types of those foreign subsidies are not considered in respect to their impact on the EU internal market. When we're talking about foreign subsidies, we we propose to rely very much on the definition that is already there in the trade instruments, in the SCM agreements, or on countervailing measures, subsidies and countervailing measures, which is also very similar to the definition of state aid within the EU. Obviously, the benefit of relying on existing definitions is to ensure legal certainty and to make it easier to for public authorities and companies to assess the existence of a foreign subsidy. Well, as I said, there are 3 modules in this white paper. The first one, and I will go a bit more into detail later on, the first one is a general market screening tool where foreign subsidies can be investigated in all types of occurrences, in all types of market situations. That can also include acquisitions or public procurement in principle. Here, the particular feature is that that is designed to be an ex officio investigation. So in contrast to what I will explain is module 2 and 3, there is no ex ante notification mechanism, but here the public authority, the supervisory authorities can become active upon information from the market in all types of situations. In contrast, module 2 is an ex ante notification mechanism where subsidized bids, subsidized acquisitions have to be notified. So that could go in parallel to a notification of a takeover or acquisition under either the national or the EU regulation. But here, so it's specific only to acquisitions. So this is the more specific instrument. The same is true for module 3, where it's also a specific instrument for public procurement, where equally there would be an obligation for bids and bidders in public procurement procedures to notify if they have in the past 3 years benefited from financial support of a non-EU government. Finally, there is an element in the white paper on which I will not say so much now, as it's a bit a separate area about the access to EU funding. Just to say that the general idea is that there should also be a level playing field and equal access conditions for companies to apply and to obtain EU funding, to EU fundings. And there, so if a company, it should be avoided basically that an applicant should have an advantage in getting EU funding through already having the benefit of a foreign subsidy, which would allow it to make a better bid or offer a better proposal. If I can go into more detail of module 1, the general subsidy screening mechanism, well, the idea is to have a 2-step procedure similar to what exists today in the other competition instruments, be it stated antitrust or mergers, a kind of first preliminary review of a subsidy, and then if the existence of a subsidy is confirmed and if an impact on the EU internal market is, there are indications for it, there would be an in-depth investigation. In terms of substantive assessment, the white paper proposes, first of all, to define a number of categories of foreign subsidies that would be likely to be distortive. Here, we have taken inspiration from what exists today in state aid rules because there are certain types of subsidies and state aid that are in the very large majority of cases incompatible, like unlimited guarantees by public authorities or rescue and restructuring aid if there's no, if the business is not viable, so if there's no business plan. So there are certain categories which we could apply in an analogous manner to foreign subsidies. But even if a foreign subsidy doesn't fall in any of these categories, there could be an assessment based on a number of indicators, and the white paper lists the number of indicators to see if the foreign subsidy is such that it risks distorting the internal market. If that assessment arrives at the conclusion that the foreign subsidy creates harm and causes harm in the EU market, there would still be the EU interest test, as we call it, where potential positive impacts of the subsidized activity or investment should be weighted against public policy interests, so that in fact the subsidy also has an indirect positive effect. If this overall assessment still leads to the conclusion that the subsidy is harmful, the consequence would be the imposition of what we call redressive measures. That could be payments. I think there we've taken again inspiration from EU state aid rules, where the typical remedy to a incompatible state aid is the repayment, is the recovery of the money back to the member state. Here we could think of scenarios where that is also a suitable remedy. On the other hand, we think that may be difficult in cases of many situations and third countries to actually control the flow of money. So there's a list of behavioral and structural remedies to remedy the situation, and there it really depends very much on the situation we are looking at, what would be an appropriate remedy. Again, we've taken inspiration from what exists today in state aid rules, or to some extent also antitrust and mergers as suitable remedies. With respect to the supervisory authority that would enforce this tool, the white paper proposes as preferred option a sharing of powers between the Commission and member states. Here, the proposal is very much alongside to what exists today in the antitrust area, where there's also shared competences between member states and the Commission to enforce Articles 101 and 102 of the treaty. And we think that could be a workable way for this foreign subsidies instrument as well. I'm coming now to module 2, the acquisition module. So here, the benchmark would be, or the test, the legal test would be if a foreign subsidy has actually facilitated an acquisition and thereby distorted the internal market. As for module 1, there would be a two-step procedure with a preliminary review, and if the concerns are confirmed, subsequently an in-depth investigation. The idea is that there would be an acquisition of what we call an EU target, so a company that is operating already and established in the EU. We would have, and the white paper includes a number of proposals how we would define acquisition, if it's the notion of control as used under the merger regulation, or if it goes further, there are proposals about shares of voting rights, but also the idea of material influence, so which would be a benchmark below the actual concept of control. The assessment criteria are very much the same as under module 1. The redressive measures is a bit the same, but here I think I would like to emphasize that obviously, as we're talking about acquisitions, a remedy and a redressive measure of last resort would be the actual prohibition of the acquisition, if that is found to be the only suitable remedy to remedy the harm from the subsidized acquisition. In terms of supervisory authority, here the white paper proposes as a preferred option to give the competence of enforcement to the Commission. The reason being is that we are talking here about an ex ante procedure where time is of the essence, not to delay this acquisition. And so there also the novelty of the instrument may make it more difficult to coordinate between different national authorities, or even at different levels. So there is a proposal to give the competence to the Commission, but it leaves the door open actually also to share with member states, as is happening today in the merger area. The third module is about public procurement here. So specifically for that economic situation, it's also about an ex ante procedure. In this case, the bidders that are submitting a bid in a public procurement procedure would have to signal to the organizer of the bidding. So it's what is called in the jargon the contracting authority, if they have received a financial contribution from a new non-EU government in the last 3 years or are likely to receive one in the next year. If such a notification arrives, that would be passed on to the supervisory authority, which typically would be at national level, with a better capability to really assess the existence of a foreign subsidy. There would also be a coordination with the Commission at EU level to ensure consistency. And if the finding of a foreign subsidy is confirmed, that would be reported back to the contracting authority that should include this element as part of its assessment of the bids and of the ongoing tender procedure. Here, to avoid hold-ups of the public procurement procedures, the proposal is that if a non-subsidized bid would in any event win this procedure, the procedure could be closed. If, on the other hand, a potentially subsidized bid wins the tender, there would have to be it would have to be waited until the assessment of the foreign subsidy is concluded. As redressive measure, well, in particular, it would be the exclusion from the ongoing public procurement procedure if harmful subsidy is confirmed, potentially also of future procurement procedures. Finally, as I mentioned, the white paper includes the element of access to EU funding. So to ensure a level playing field when companies compete for EU funding. There, a distinction has to be made between different types of EU funding mechanisms, notably direct management, which is then funding directly granted out by the Commission or agencies, or a shared management if the member states are responsible for the handing out of the money. In principle, much of what is relevant in this area would be covered by module 3, sorry, which is for public procurement, because much of the money in this area is granted by way of public procurement procedures. So if there's a solution for module 3, automatically it would solve most of the issues for access to EU funding. And to the extent that this is not the case, so it's especially grants procedures where there's often no tender, the rules should be copied and as much as possible. Yeah, the white paper was adopted a month ago. The public consultation is ongoing until the 23rd of September. And the idea then, based on the public consultation and further assessments and discussions that we will have, that the Commission would come forward with a legislative proposal next year, which could cover all the areas or just some of these areas. That is really will be the outcome of the discussion and of the consultation in the coming months.
Thank you, Christof, for your comprehensive presentation and introduction to the new tools. I think the idea is that we will take comments and questions from the audience after Michael's intervention. So Michael, please, you can start now.
Sure. Let me try to put up my slides. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, many thanks for inviting me to speak at this webinar. As Melinda mentioned, this is quite an important and great groundbreaking, development. Actually, although this white paper was just recently published, I have already got a lot of inquiries from many of my Chinese clients. People are wondering, why, you see at this time issue such a white paper. What does it mean to Chinese, companies? Does it mean that EC is closing its door to Chinese investors? Does it mean this, white paper will introduce, some, legislations which are mainly kind of targeting at, Chinese companies? So there have been a lot of questions around this white paper. So Christof, thanks a lot for giving me also a quite helpful summary of this white paper, and also share your thoughts with us. So today I just want to provide some general comments from international or maybe more specific China perspective, primarily based on my experience acting for Chinese clients in respect of the outbound investment. As many of you know that EU has been one of the primary markets for Chinese companies, doing the outbound deals, and the trade, yeah. Before I share, my general comments, there are a few initial observations I want to make, which will hopefully set the tone of my remarks, and hopefully, will be addressed during the public consultation period. I quite agree that the devils are in the details. So I think I'm not sure whether I am now in a position to answer my client's question. As I mentioned, what is white paper or the subsequent legislative efforts mean to Chinese companies? Does it mean EU will shut the door to Chinese companies? A couple of initial observations. First of all, understand the white paper defines the problem as a concern that foreign subsidies may have facilitated the acquisition of EU companies or distorted investment decisions, market operation, or bidding in public procurement. I guess a key question for stakeholders such as Chinese company will be to provide really concrete examples of foreign subsidies that have resulted in actual distortion in the market. These distortions need to be quantified in economic terms. However, unfortunately, the white paper seems to be kind of silent on this. The perceived level of actual distortions will then naturally influence whether the proposed framework is too far-reaching or sort of proportionate. The second observation I'm going to make is that the definition of subsidies, as Christof mentioned, seems to rely on the state-aid framework. But we think that we really benefits from further assessments and guidance in the public consultation, particularly given the complex structure of state-owned companies in China and their investment. For example, a lot of backing by state-owned banks in any kind of outbound investment deal by Chinese companies. So with that kind of a state bank financing would constitute form of like foreign subsidies. Third, the proposal under the white paper generally appear wide-ranging to address foreign subsidies, but they also need to be, I think, as Christopher you mentioned earlier, to be understand and read in the context of the range of existing, regulatory mechanism against the foreign, investments. I quite agree that there may be a regulatory gap in the EU state aid rules, which currently, as I understand, only apply to EU member states. But I think foreign investment in the EU is already regulated by the other measures, like in the foreign investment law and the merger, regulation. In terms of the potential impact on the Chinese investment into the EU, as a general note, if you look at the Fortune 500 2019 list, actually about 120 are Chinese companies. The majority of these 120 Chinese companies are state-owned. However, Chinese foreign direct investment in the EU continued to drop in 2019, and if you calculate the share of the state-owned companies, have further declined. There seems to be a kind of clear answer. There seems to be no clear answer what has led to this decline, but people's perception is that the changing regulatory environment in EU could have contributed to the drop. So with this white paper and then also the tightening up of the EU's foreign investment regime, there has been increasing concern among Chinese investors, as I mentioned, regarding the future investment into the EU. For Chinese companies, the key concern is whether the further regulations to control foreign subsidies will deter foreign investment into the EU, particularly in light of as I mentioned, the current various form of foreign direct investment screening regulations at the EU and member states level, in addition to the EU merger control regulations. I think that a far-reaching regime intended to create a level playing field could therefore have unintended consequences and result in different type of distortion of EU's economy if not properly balanced. Overall, taking into account the proposed foreign subsidy measures as well as the FDI and merger control regimes, companies will be forced to make a range of notifications and disclosures to our variety of authorities at both the EU and the member state level, which might have different agendas, powers, and particularly including in relation to remedies. While the white paper recognized the existence of various regulations intended to screen foreign investors, it will be crucial for the Commission during the implementation to ensure that different regimes are properly streamlined, harmonized, that there are no conflicts in terms of jurisdiction, and there's sufficient cooperation, for example, between the DG Trade and the DG Com. In addition, Chinese companies recognize that the economies in the EU benefits, I think, greatly from foreign investment from China. So I think from the Chinese investors' perspective, a key consideration of the proposed whatever mechanism would be to balance the interests of different member states in the EU, particularly those smaller economies that have seen significant benefits from the Chinese investment. So I think between the EU member states, there could be also like a conflict of interests in this regard. Generally, we think that that requires further clarity to avoid over application. Under module 1, as Christof mentioned, we also understand the foreign subsidy threshold is proposed to be set at 200,000 euro. This mirrors the existing thresholds applicable under the EU state aid rules. However, this although this seems to reflect the threshold under EU state-aid rules, this, one size fits all threshold could result in over-application. Given the size of China's, companies and the economy, including the prevalence of the state-owned companies, if you set the threshold at this level, we are concerned too many transactions might be caught. Second, regarding the material influence, we understand the measures under Module 2 relating to the acquisition of EU targets not only cover acquisition of a control, but acquisition above certain percentages and any material influence over undertaking. We are concerned that this can be interpreted quite broadly and could result in a range of non-relevant transactions being caught. Based on our understanding, the concept of material influence seem to be differ from the control analysis under the EU merger control regime. Certainly, in terms of the recognition of the benefits from resulting from subsidies, the white paper recognized that a balance needs to be struck between distortion in the market and the positive impact on investments. Many subsidies encourage environmental protection, energy conservation, or support R&D activities, innovation. So it'll be critical that this balancing test really recognizing benefit is clearly set out and applied. So I think that's further guidance and the list of criteria recognizing possible benefits will be useful, including circumstances in which benefits may prevail over identified distortion. Application to all market situations. The scope of intervention in Module 2, we understand would apply to all market situations. However, it would be possible to replicate the sectoral approach of the FDI screening and only apply to sectors strategically important to the EU or to the third country, including China. Fourth, use of information gathering powers. For large Chinese companies, as I'm sure that many of you have probably had the experience, the majority of them are state-owned companies. So information disclosures remain quite a sensitive issue, particularly given the complex structure of state-owned companies. I think this has been a problem in the merger control area involving Chinese state-owned companies. So I think in light of these challenges, we believe that information requirements should be minimized to require only what is necessary to ensure compliance. The white paper recognized the difficulty in obtaining of information from certain countries. For example, under Module 1, the white paper explains that adequate investigative tools are necessary to seek information. Under Module 2, information requirements could be extensive if an in-depth investigation is launched. So it will be crucial to ensure powers do not result in overreach, and investigation techniques and the evidential rules are proportionate and aligned to existing merger control and the state aid frameworks. So I'm going to stop here, see whether people have any questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. Your critical comments have, we follow them with extreme interest. Of course, you pointed out to the potential unintended effects of the new regulation on the development of third country investment in the European Union. I'm sure this is something that the European Commission is very clear in its mind. The last thing this new instrument wish to reach is, of course, to discourage for investment in the union, which is so important for the union economy. As to the points that you correctly raised about the need for more clarity, of course, this is a high-level document that only starts the legislative process. There will be time for the Commission to table its proposal, and I'm sure by that time the rules will be more focused and more detailed. Of course, Christof, if you want to react to Michael, I think you should take the floor now. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Michael, also for your critical analysis. And I think I'm grateful really that you are identifying critical points in what we need to investigate in the coming months. And I think I agree with many of your questions that we need more clarity on the coordination with the other instruments, also between the different authorities. We need to take into account the complexity of financial flows and of companies outside third countries. I think that is, I think you've identified, I think, many of the relevant points where we will need to think in more detail how to propose legislation that is also workable. And I think, as Cesare was just saying, I think we also very well aware that Europe needs foreign direct investment. And I think we are very well aware that we don't want to stifle and prevent foreign investment. I think Europe has lived very much on foreign direct investment, and I think the last thing is to stop the welcome flow of foreign direct investment. That's why we try to design an instrument that really only tackles problematic cases. But apart from these more general comments, I would just like also to clarify that the instrument as it's proposed in the white paper doesn't propose any distinction between different sectors. Now, I think you mentioned the FDI screening regulation, which looks at certain, well, I think it's called critical infrastructures or strategic sectors, or whatever you may call them. I think here the idea, it's really a kind of more general competition instrument, let's call it. We don't look specifically into any sector. It's also the document and the whole approach is not meant to look into any specific third country. I think what needs to be designed and is supposed to be designed needs to work for any third country. And it's also, we don't think in terms of nationalities of companies either. I think it's really the triggering point is a foreign subsidy, so that can clearly be identified, financial support given by a non-EU government, and the beneficiary can be any company that operates in the EU, irrespective of who is the ultimate owner. And for some companies now, the ownership will be very dispersed. To try to think that this is a company that is majority owned, I don't know, by Australian, American, Japanese, whoever owners, we say it doesn't matter, because the only thing this instrument is interested in is the foreign subsidy. And it doesn't matter who is, well, you can anyway not speak about the nationality of the company, but that should not matter who are the ultimate owners of the company. So I think there the idea really of this proposal is to make it very general in terms of sectors, third countries, companies. I think there is no discrimination built in or intended.
Thank you, Christof.
Maybe if I can start sharing a comment on, many thanks for this really useful interaction, is, well, taking a step back, we are a network of competition practitioners, and and probably some of us, well, me certainly, I'm wondering whether this is, I wouldn't say the price to pay, because, you know, I really can see the regulatory gap. We're trying to address it, but is this what we need to, so to speak, save competition enforcement as we know it, the merger control procedure as we know it? Because, you know, what comes to mind, and perhaps, you know, the elephant in the room in this kind of conversation, is the debate which, you know, surrounded high-profile merger cases. I mean, talking about Siemens Alstom, but that's by no means the only case where there were a number of policy arguments that were thrown in the debate. And, you know, there was quite a bit of debate about, you know, should antitrust law, should merger control take into account this instrument, and in a way giving a space and a place and a time for this kind of consideration. You know, I'm not saying it's the same, absolutely the same type of consideration, but, you know, probably, and I'm really putting it out there, is something that helps also, you know, define what competition law is about and what merger control law is about, and give another hand, which is a different hand, to address this gap. So, you know, in a way, also in the conversation I happen to have with clients, I'm between two minds, and quite spontaneously, in a way, I also see the good side of it, because in any event, when you're advising on merger control strategy, you know, having some sort of comfort that these considerations would not play in that arena, it's actually something positive. So, you know, more than a question, is really a comment. And then perhaps a question I had, where you know, you both touched upon that, is about the interplay with the foreign investment regulation. And I totally, you know, I totally see the point that Christof made about having, you know, an overarching tool. I think what's going to be tricky is really to ensure the coordination about the whole enforcers, because also, you know, in foreign investment, you know, there's a lot of debate about the role of the European Commission in terms of, you know, of coordination, consultation of the powers which will be exercised by the national authorities, and putting another, you know, you said, Christof, that in this case, probably the competent authority for the new tool will be the Commission. You know, I can't even think about the various permutations, but I think that would be one of the very important factors to be kept in, to making sure that everybody's pulling in the same direction, or at least you know who's doing what. So basically sharing one thought and a sort of question.
Yes, if I may react to this, I think you're right. I think we have a competition framework that is incomplete today. I mean, there is state aid control, and member states accept state aid control as long as they have the feeling it's applied to everybody. Companies accept merger rules and antitrust rules as long as they know it applies to everyone in the same way. So the whole legitimacy of the competition rule rests basically on the feeling and on the fact that it applies it to everyone at the same time, and it really creates a level playing field. And as we see here a gap, and you seem to share this analysis, that there is one element that is missing, which is this influence of foreign subsidies. If that gap is not filled, then it may become more and more important due to the stronger links between the different economies and more and more investment across borders. I think there's a risk that if this gap is not filled, it puts in question the rules as a whole. So I think it may mean, and I think we are conscious of this, more more coordination, more red tape for companies. Now, if you take the case, and I think you're right to point it out, of an acquisition, an acquisition may now fall under anywhere the merger regulation or national rules of merger regulation, and then under the FDI screening regulation, depending on the sector, and potentially this new instrument on foreign subsidies. So there is one more procedure that would be added, and I think we can fully understand that this is not a very tempting prospect for companies. So that's why we think we need to coordinate these procedures and, for example, really run an EU merger notification in parallel to the largest possible extent to foreign subsidy case, and also coordinate on the FDI with the FDI screening regulation. So I see the concerns, and I think that's why we really need to target the instrument as well as possible. But on the other hand, if the trade-off is to put in danger the shared feeling that the rules are not fair overall, I think that is a very big risk, which undermines the framework as a whole. And maybe one more comment on this. I think also we as EU, we have actually a preference for multilateral solutions. So if under the WTO or some other framework, rules can be found to control foreign subsidies at multilateral level, is still the preferred route to go. And the one doesn't exclude the other. Here, this instrument would be a defensive instrument to really fill a gap if this gap cannot be filled in agreement with the major trading partners, or even more generally under the WTO. And I think that's why in the best case, we never need to use this instrument, because other solutions, better solutions, global solutions can be found. But I think as things are today, there is not so much prospect in the coming months and years to find multilateral solutions, but maybe this instrument can actually help to give it a push in this direction.
Thank you, Christof. I would now read a question that was raised by Simon Yarak of Oxera. I'm going to read this question. The type of analysis underpinning the existence of a subsidy, what is called the economic advantage in state aid rules, can be quite sophisticated in EU state aid practice. Similarly, the analysis of distortions is now starting to be more detailed in state aid cases, e.g. ex post evaluations. By contrast, trade defense is considered by some economists to involve a lighter or more formulaic economic analysis. Given that these new powers, especially Module 1, seem to be at the interface between trade defense and state aid rules, are we likely to see detailed economic assessment as part of investigations?
Yes, thanks for the question, which is a very fair and valid question. And probably we don't have the answer yet, because we are at an early stage of development, but I would agree with the question here to the extent that the assessment under EU state aid rules of what is a subsidy or what is an economic advantage, what is a distortion is, of course, rather sophisticated. We have a case practice over more than 50 years. So necessarily this has evolved, and also the access to information within the EU is easier than it will be under this instrument, where part of the information will have to come from outside the EU, even though the beneficiaries we're talking about are often likely to operate in the EU, so that will give a hook, I think, then also to obtain the necessary information. So I think certainly to start with, or to put it another way, it would be not realistic to expect that the assessment under this foreign subsidies instrument will have the same degree of sophistication as today's state aid cases, because it would be an impossible task. So probably in that respect, we will have to rely more on how these things are done today in the trade defense instruments. and start off at least with assessment, also taking into account the information that we actually get. So I think we will have to have necessarily, I think, a lighter assessment, but of course the burden of proof will still be with the supervisory authorities, whoever that is, to actually show the existence of a subsidy, its impact on the EU market, and the existence of a distortion. So I think even if we say the burden of proof may be lighter, we will have to have sufficient elements to conclude on these points. So it's not that I think we would get away easily with a very light assessment that has no basis in the facts that are available.
Thank you, Christof. Are there any other questions from the attendees? Lorenzo Pace wanted to ask a question, but apparently there is some technical glitch, so he is connected, but I cannot see him, and so I cannot allow him to ask a question. If there is no other question, I would have a couple of questions for you, Christof. One concerns the legal basis for the regulation of whatever a piece of legislation it will be. Of course, you are the aim of the new legislation is to fill some gap. I wonder whether it is entirely in the competence of the Union to legislate on these new powers and new instruments. I know that in the white paper, the thing is that the issue is dealt with very brief by saying it will depend ultimately on the content of the legislation. But I was wondering whether you have already given thought to this issue. Maybe are you thinking of implied powers, like it was the case also for the major regulation, which had the double basis? And the second question concerns the status of the rights of complainants, beneficiaries, foreign investors, also in terms of due process. You don't cover this, I mean, the white paper doesn't cover this matter, but probably you have already started your reflections on this matter. We know that under EU state aid rules, this status is traditionally limited because the member states that grant the aid are the main defendants in the procedure, and also they are under a duty to cooperate with the Commission, which of course wouldn't be the case for third countries. So my question is, what are your reflections today on this matter? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Cesare. On the legal basis, yeah, as you said, the white paper does not yet conclude or does not even propose specifically what would be the legal basis, which also has to do with the fact that we are talking here about the different modules and also this access to EU funding. So depending on which part of the white paper we're talking about, the answer may well be different. I mean, to be frank, as we are at the interface between competition policy and trade policy, we also realize that this is an issue for the legal basis, as the EU treaty at the time didn't precisely envisage that situation. So there is not an easy answer to this. We are certainly thinking about the common commercial policy, as there is an angle in the instrument referring to the common commercial policy. But that may not be enough, or may have to be complemented by internal market rules. So the reflections are ongoing, and there may be not only one answer, as I said, because when we look at the different modules, we may have to look at the different legal basis in the treaty. When it comes to the rights of complainants and the rights that would be given in a legislative proposal, I think you're right to point out that when we look at the state aid procedure, it's a procedure between member states and the Commission. Here, in most cases, actually, the counterpart would not be public authorities somewhere, but probably then the beneficiary benefiting from the foreign subsidy. So we need to see how to extend or to the rights of the rights of the complainants in that procedure. Obviously, in practice, we will rely a lot on market information. Whether that automatically means that there would be a formal right of complaint, we don't know yet. I think that is one of the things we will need to think about when drafting actually the legal proposal.
Thank you, Christof. Is there any other question? Otherwise, I maybe would like to give the last word to Michael. From Michael, I would like to know, out of curiosity, of course, you have told us about the reaction that this proposal has received in China. Especially you refer to your clients and to the all the interest that they have shown to this proposal. Is this going in the direction that some of your clients, yourself on behalf of your clients, are participating in the consultation process? Do you see actually responding to the consultation?
Yeah, some clients, as I mentioned, asked a lot of questions. I guess, I mean, they also be interested in making some comments during the consultation in the period, because they are quite concerned about this white paper, particularly the subsequent any new legislations, which we understand the Commission will introduce, based on the white paper after the consultation period. Yeah. So I guess they're interested, and well, we are also talking to some clients and trying to gather their comments. Yeah, and the questions. We would be also interested in representing some of our Chinese clients to submit whatever comments and concerns to the Commission.
Thank you. And would you like to react to anything that was said after your intervention?
Well, I think that as Christopher mentioned, these rules are not intending to target any company in terms of their origin, right? But I think at least there has been perception among Chinese companies that they will be most impacted by these rules. There has been concern that this is just another kind of a tool, in addition to the tightening up of the foreign investment screening of Chinese investment in the EU. So it seems to a lot of my clients, well, EU is indeed closing its door to China, just like the US. As previously, a lot of my clients still believe that it's still possible to do deals in Europe because compared with the US, EU is more friendly to Chinese companies. Nowadays, none of my clients would want to do any deals in the US because they brought geopolitical tension, the relationship, the CFIUS and all that. But Europe, has been, particularly for countries like Italy and Germany, previously a lot of Chinese clients have been doing deals, in these countries, and it's mutually beneficial to the EU and China, for like Chinese investment. Yeah, of course, we understand. I also agree that the distortion of any state aid, foreign subsidies, only kind of impact the level playing field. But at the same time, people are still concerned that that can create kind of unintended consequences. Yeah, I guess some of the levels are in the details. it's really important to bear in mind for foreign company. If they have for them every deals, they need to make a separate notifications and like foreign subsidy and the foreign direct investment, and also the merger control rules, at both EU level or member states level, and all these authorities have different policy goals. I think that would be a nightmare. Yeah. So that basically means effectively EU is closing the door to trans investments, which I'm sure that's not the intention of the Commission, or not the purpose of this white paper. But I think I do see risk if that there's no kind of a careful balance, and well, again, as I said, the details. I mean, the devil's in the details. So we remain interested in seeing any further clarification of some of the issues, as I mentioned in the white paper.
Thank you for your comments, Michael. Unless there is anybody else who wants to say something more, I think this brings us to the close. Thank you very much, Christof and Michael, for this very interesting discussion. I think the recording of the session will be posted on our website in the next days, so maybe an even wider audience can benefit from this exchange. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Interest.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Very
Thank you
interesting.
very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for your contribution.
Bye.
Bye.